Okay, dear Dhamma friends, we have come to the second Dhamma sermon of this retreat. May you give your consent by saying sadhu sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Seelavanta uso kottita bhikkhuna viññānupadāna khandha dukkhato yoniso manasika tabbāti. As you all know, we have taken Seelavanta Sutta as the topic of this series of retreats. So actually we have covered a lot in this sutta. Actually, it is available in Khandha Sangyutta, Connected Discourses of the Buddha. And as I said even on yesterday, there are a kind of a discussion happened between two chief disciples of the Buddha, that is Venerable Mahasariputta and Venerable Mahakottita. Venerable Mahakottita approached Venerable Sariputta and asked a question: when one established himself in morality, what next he has to do? And they are, without mentioning much about the concentration, immediately Venerable Sariputta tells that he has to contemplate 5 clinging aggregates as impermanent, suffering and non-self. So this is the kind of the essence of the advice which Venerable Mahasariputta giving to Venerable Mahakottita. And one might think that this may be the advice for a typical worldly being or kind of a worldly person who haven't yet attained. But Venerable Mahakottita does not stop there. He asks what are the results of this practice, and Venerable Sariputta says, if one practice like this, he may be able to become a Sotapanna. Then Venerable Mahakottita asks, once he becomes a Sotapanna, what he has to do? Venerable Sariputta repeated the same answer. So he has to contemplate these 5 clinging aggregates as impermanent, suffering and non-self. And he would then be able to attain a Sakadagami, once returner. And then Venerable Mahakottita asks what he has to do. Then Venerable Mahasariputta repeat the same answer, telling that he still has to contemplate 5 clinging aggregates as impermanent, suffering and non-self. And then he would be able to become an Anagami, that's the non-returner. And once he become a non-returner, what he has to do in order to become an Arahant, fully enlightened being? Then Venerable Mahasariputta interestingly give the same answer, telling that he still has to contemplate 5 clinging aggregates as impermanent, suffering and non-self. Now we might think that Venerable Mahakottita would stop there. He still didn't stop there. He still asks, when one becomes an Arahant, what he has to do? Then Venerable Sariputta still give the same answer, telling that even an Arahant may contemplate 5 clinging aggregates as impermanent, suffering and non-self, not because he has any defilements, but it gives a lot of happiness, it gives a lot of pleasant abiding and kind of a pleasant mindfulness. So we can see in terms of vipassana, it is a very much the same thing we have to do again and again. It's a repeated practice. So in this series of Dhamma sermons, we have taken one by one, very much like discussing about the form aggregate, discussing about the feeling aggregate, discussing about the perception aggregate, and discuss about the fabrications or the sankhara aggregate. And now we are trying to discuss about the consciousness aggregate. That is the Viññāna aggregate, Viññāna Khandha. So yesterday we taken a initial step. So discuss some parts in consciousness aggregate. There are one important point Buddha highlights is that this particular consciousness is conditionally arisen. It is not something without conditions which is arisen, but rather due to conditions it is arisen. So Buddha categorically says, Paccayam paticca uppajjati viññānam. Paccayam paticca uppajjati viññānam. So due to causes, this consciousness arises. What are the consciousness? Various 6 types of consciousness are given. When form comes to be with the eye, then eye consciousness arises. When sounds comes to be with the ear consciousness arises. When smells comes to be with nose consciousness arises. When taste comes to be with tongue consciousness arises. When tangible sensations comes into be with body consciousness arises. When mental objects come into be with in contact with the mind consciousness arises. So this is very much the theory how consciousness arises. And we need to remember it is fully conditioned. So if we consider it in practical terms, say we are looking at a beautiful child, for example, and we understand immediately there is a form, and we are looking at it through our eyes. And now, according to the theory, eye consciousness arises. And eye consciousness has arisen due to that form. And we have looked at that child. If we haven't looked at that child, still we couldn't get this eye consciousness. When we looked at that child, only eye consciousness arises. And it is conditioned, therefore. And when we are watching that child, suppose we are really happy about it. Abhinandati. So we are delight in this happiness. We delight in this sight. Suppose it's our beloved son, beloved daughter. And so we are so happy to see him or her. So we are delighted in this sight. So eye consciousness arises. And it does not stop there. So we keep growing it. We are adding to it. And more eye consciousness. It does not stop there. More and more eye consciousness. Repeatedly eye consciousness arises. It appears like it's a kind of a one eye consciousness. But rather, what really happens is, one after the other, series of eye consciousness arise. And we are welcoming that as well, because the feeling which comes afterwards is so pleasing, so happy. And so we welcomes that. And our mind totally immersed in this object, totally immersed in this form, ajjosaya tittati. Totally immersed or totally holding on to this form. So this is the nature of the conditioned consciousness. And sometimes we call it as patittita viññāna, well-established consciousness. Well established. And it has a kind of a discriminative feature. When we are looking at that form, we know, I am looking at that form, that child is there, I am here. So we can see this discriminating nature. We recognize there is child and I am here and I am looking at him or her. So I am little making it gross in order for us to understanding it. So immediately it is not the child but just a kind of a color we recognize. But later on through our other perceptions coming into being, so then we recognize it as a child, daughter, son, and likewise we come into further elaboration. But initially, say it's just a visible form and it is in contact with the eye, and then eye consciousness arises. So it is well established now. And to this well established eye consciousness, we are adding some more. We are again putting our own preparations. We are fabricating it. So it is further called abhisankata viññāna, we are fabricated consciousness. Now you can see, even though the very initial state, it happens in a very innocent manner, but later on, we are adding more and more things to it and become kind of a fairly established, fairly strong consciousness, and that is where we call Vijnana Upadanakkhandha. Now it become a clinging aggregate. Now we have clung to that particular object due to the form, due to the I. So what is the practice then? So practice comes to avoid this kind of clinging. So the advice given by Venerable Sariputta is, this Vijnana Upadanakkhandha has to be seen as impermanent. This clinging I consciousness has to be seen as impermanent, has to be seen as suffering, and has to be seen as non-self. So how are we going to begin it? Start it. So as I said yesterday, we can't immediately do it, because we need fair amount of mindfulness and wisdom, clear comprehension to do it. So Buddha therefore specially advised for us, don't immediately get into Chittanupassana, look at your mind by your own mind, rather develop Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana first. That is why typically for beginners, we always recommend to be with the body. Look at how your body is operating. Look at what are the sensations occurring in your body. So you are watching it. You have something verifiable, which is not deluding, which is not cheating, but you can simply be with the body. You can simply keep your attention on body sensation and you are looking at it. Say for example, you are watching breathing. In breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. Each breath, you are keeping your attention, keeping your mind, established mindfulness. So slightly mindfulness develop. To each breath, mindfulness develop. Each breath, little amount of mindfulness develop. So like manner, we are developing mindfulness. Similarly, we are developing some focused attention. We are developing concentration. And we are developing wisdom as well. At that time, suppose series of thoughts come. That is maybe the consciousness. But at the moment, we are not going to handle it. We simply escape from it, discard it. Because right now, we are developing spiritual faculties. Suppose we succeeded in it. So we are able to develop fair amount of mindfulness now. Fair amount of concentration is available. And we know how to handle it. To some extent at least. Then we have some amount of confidence in our practice. We know that I may not break a precept. I can still undergo a certain level of influence to the defilements, but still I may not break a precept. You may get some kind of confidence. And once you have such confidence, then probably you can look at your mind. Once you look at your mind, so Buddha says, Chitta Patisangvedi. So you are now, rather than keeping your attention to the body, rather than keeping your attention to feeling, you are now keeping your attention to mind. So what is happening in the mind? Now Buddha says, Saragan Chittang, Saragan Chittanti Pajanati. Now the mind is little lustful. So you know now mind is lustful. Vitaragan Chittang, Vitaragan Chittanti Pajanati. Now you know mind is free from lust. You know that as well. Sadosan Chittang, Sadosan Chittanti Pajanati. You know now mind has some anger. Vitadosan Chittang, Vitadosan Chittanti Pajanati. You know it is free from anger. So you can see now you are not identifying with lust and you are not identifying with anger as well. So you know it is mind, it is not I. And all these states of mind I don't need to blindly follow. You can separate from the mind and you can watch the mind. You have some kind of a dispassion. You have some kind of a separation. You have some kind of detachment. Now you can watch the mind. Mind may be going through some lust, but still you can watch it. Mind may be going through some aversion, but still you can watch. More you develop this skill, you can see if you are not participating to it, if you are not adding to it, if we are not intentionally fabricating it, it will slowly diminish, it will slowly disappear, and it will come to its natural cessation. Suppose lust is arising and you are simply watching it, and you are not adding to it. And due to causes this lust has arisen, and since you are not adding to it, and this arisen lust slowly fades away, and you understand it. Now anger arisen. You know, now mind has anger, and you are not adding it. You are not fabricating it. You are not make any kind of intentional participation, but rather you are watching it. Then anger slowly fades away and it ceases. And you can understand all these states of mind also impermanent. If we are not adding to it, if we are not getting hold to it, then they will come to their own cessation. They are all arising and passing away. What happens if we get hold onto it? Then we feel suffering. We feel some tension. We feel stressful. And more you understand like this, Buddha says, Chitte chittanupasse viharato chittang virajjati. So more you see what happens in the mind, you feel further detached from the process. Because you understand there are many causes for lust to arise. So due to those causes, lust arisen in the mind. If you can establish mindfulness at that time, you are not encouraging lust. Rather, you can separate your attention from lust and simply watch it, and lust will fade away. There are many causes. Anger may arise in the mind, and you are not encouraging it. You are not rationalizing it, telling that he is wrong, I am correct. Rather, you simply see anger as anger. Then anger simply disappears. So you more and more you see, you will understand it is impermanent. We are the one keeping them more and more. We are the one keeping them for long time. If we are not adding to it, if we are not encouraging them, if we are not welcoming them, whatever arisen will pass away. Whatever arisen will pass away. So it's a kind of a deep insight which is developing in the minds of the yogi who is looking at the mind. And sometimes we, rather than just seeing how it is arising and passing away, we might even see what are the causes. Due to what causes these particular thoughts are arising. It may be due to some kind of craving. I have some attachment towards particular person. Due to that, many thoughts are arising engaged with that person. Because I have some attachment towards that person. So you see this inner tendency. You see this underneath latent attachment. Sometimes certain patterns of thought have conceit as the cause. So you understand it. Maybe kind of an ego is there as the cause. So more you see the kind of this cause, further you understand about how mind is working. And once you understand such causes, these patterns or these trains of thoughts start to diminish. So that is the other advantage. More and more you are understanding it, more and more you are not encouraging it, more and more you don't get deluded by it, more and more you release from it. Next time it is happening, but with less strength. So you can handle it. And you know how to handle it, because you have handled it successfully in the previous time. And sometimes these are happening because of our ignorance. We think rather than just keeping the mind free, if our mind is engaged with something, it might give a lot of pleasure. So we have that kind of ignorance, and you might see even that ignorance. And sometimes even due to karma, various thoughts are happening. Immediately we may not be able to distinguish whether it is happening due to karma or other reasons. But according to the teaching, due to karma also certain thoughts are arising. And you can see various ways we can see what is going on in this mind. More and more you do it, more and more you get detached from it. And then Buddha says, samadhang chittang. So then more and more you detach from it, more and more you separate from it, mind starts to calm down. Because we are not encouraging thoughts. We are not encouraging mental proliferation. Rather, once they are arising, we simply step back and watch and allow them to cease. Then slowly, these trains of thoughts become shorter. At the beginning, suppose it lasts for several minutes. But we didn't participate and we didn't encourage. So now this time period reduces. Now it lasts for 1 minute. We further improve ourselves. Now it lasts only for 30 seconds. Now it lasts only for 15 seconds. Likewise, whatever the trains of thoughts occurring, now they pass away sooner than before. And you further get dispassionate about it. And suppose in a given time, certain series of thoughts arisen and you didn't participate, you didn't encourage it, it ceases. Another series of thoughts arisen and you didn't participate, you didn't encourage, that also ceased. Suppose there is no third series of thoughts arisen. So what happened? At that time, mind is fairly free. At that time, if you are not paying your attention to the body and trying to find out an object from the body, you are not putting your attention to the feeling and trying to establish your mind on feeling. And now mind also free and you have nothing to establish your attention on the mind as well. In other terms, we first has our body as the anchoring point. And then we develop to feeling as our anchoring point. That is where we establish our mindfulness. Then we step into mind. So there are a series of minds, lustful mind, aversion, like that. Various types of minds occurred. Those become our object of attention. Suppose all these three are free and we are not putting our attention to any of those three. Then what happens? That is where we step into an entirely different paradigm. So Buddha says, vimochayang chittang. So now mind becomes free. So this is a significant step in one's vipassana. So one may feel it in a different manner. Sometimes we might feel frightened. And sometimes we might feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we might feel that we lost our orientation. Because so far we have come by keeping some kind of object as our attention, some kind of object as our establishment for the mindfulness. But now mindfulness going to an entirely different paradigm which has mindfulness but there is no object. Mind is utterly free. So then what a teacher would say is, so you go next time also to the same state. Don't get frightened. Do it again and again. So you again practice, again start watching the mind, again you get into that kind of a resting period. Suppose you are able to maintain it for 1 minute. Next time you are again coming back to the same place. Suppose you are maintaining it for 5 minutes. Suppose next time you are maintaining it for 15 minutes. Suppose you are maintaining it for 1 hour. Then the yogi has a fair amount of maturity. He understands mindfulness can last even without an object. There is type of consciousness which is not manifested. So far, consciousness was there, it is always manifested. Always it has to establish with something. When form is there, eye consciousness arisen, well established with this form. When sound is there, if we are welcoming it, if we are delighted in it, if we are holding it, consciousness is well established in sound. But now here, nothing to establish, nothing to get hold on. That is where Buddha says, appatittita vijnana, unestablished consciousness. So in this state, some may experience as entirely empty. So we call it as emptiness. And some may feel it as no signs at all. So we call it as signless. So it is a kind of a concentration which you encounter in Vipassana. And one may have to develop that as a concentration as well. So that's why I said, so develop it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, like that. So you know it's a kind of a concentration. It's a kind of a ceto vimutti, freedom of mind. And you have some understanding about it now. Say yoga is now developing. And more one develops it, then he may become somewhat familiar with it, and he know, even while walking, without putting his attention to these objects, these various sensations, how he can maintain his mind free from objects. And while sweeping, how when body is sweeping, when body is doing that simple activity, how one can maintain a freedom of mind. While you are eating, how you can maintain freedom of mind. And the yogi may start to appreciate that freedom. At the beginning it appears like utter boredom. But later on, slowly, the yogi will understand it is kind of a freedom. Because whenever an object is grasped, whenever this consciousness is well established, it generates some amount of friction, some amount of tension, some amount of stress. But when mind is free, there is nothing to attach, nothing to get hold on to. Mind has its own freedom. And yogi may understand it slowly, and he abides with it. And more he abides by it. Then this type of concentration becomes accessible even with less concentration, even with less effort. So further he develops, and with less effort now he is maintaining a freedom of mind. He maintains with less effort because he likes it or he delights in it now in a different manner, in a kind of a dispassionate manner. And now he is losing lust, now he is losing aversion, now he is losing delusion. So various defilements are now slowly fading away. And he understands the operation of the mind, how mind is deluding us, how mind is tricking us, and what are the traps in the mind, what are the patterns in the mind. He slowly understands about himself. So this step-by-step process Buddha explains very beautifully in several suttas. I have extracted one sutta which comes in Samyutta Nikaya. It's called Bija Sutta, about seeds. So there Buddha says, Rupa dhatuya che bhikkhave bhikkhuno rago pahino hoti. suppose he is now talking about the form aggregate. Now related to the forms, he has now kind of a dispassionate feeling. He is not lustful about various forms. Due to that, ragassa pahana vachijjata rammanang patitta viññānasa nohoti. Now, to explain it little, suppose you had some kind of attachment to some form. So your mind has established now. Eye consciousness has arisen. And now little bit, say several seconds, now it is going on in eye consciousness. Separate, another eye consciousness arise, another eye consciousness arise, another eye consciousness arise. A series of eye consciousness arise. Later on, now you establish your mindfulness and you understood, now I am passionate about that particular form. At that time, suppose you establish your mindfulness and you step back. So what has happened to that eye consciousness? It will stop there. It will fade there. So you cut off that eye consciousness there. So then that established eye consciousness is no more. Then tang appatititang viññānang avirulhang anabhisankacca vimuttang. So Buddha says that unestablished consciousness, now what you have is kind of an unestablished consciousness, kind of a freedom of mind, and it is not grasping anything, it is not established anywhere, therefore it is free. And it is not allowing to grow any kind of established consciousness like eye consciousness. It's not, now you are not promoting it. And due to that, since you are detached from it, and you are now feeling freedom. Because when mind is well established, when the consciousness is well established, when you are welcoming it, when you are delighted in it, when you are holding in it, still you are developing stress. And once you understand it, you step back and you detach from it, you release it, and now you feel freedom. Vimuttatta titang. So once you feel freedom, you feel that your mind is still. So this Buddha says you have to do again and again, and more you do it. Suppose again it goes to some form, again you do the same principle, you step back, you establish mindfulness, you become dispassionate, you release it. Again you become free. Again mind sees an object, again due to some causes it grasps, you understand now mind is grasping, you are having some kind of tension, you understand the tension, you release, and then again you feel freedom. And once you feel freedom, your mind is still. Titatta santusitang. So once mind is free, once mind is still, it feels contentment. Titatta santusitang. It feels contented. Santusisatta na paritassati. So when mind becomes contented, it is not agitated. Aparitassang paccattang eva parinibbayati. So when there is no agitation and he feels kind of quenched, he feels some kind of a soothing effect, some kind of a peace. And it occurs again and again. And the yogi has to practice it again and again, and he understands this process. Due to causes, due to influxes, due to various personal traits, we attach. Once attached, we feel tension. Then we feel tension, we understand where I got stuck, where my mind has grasped. Once you understand it, you understand the cause and you release the cause. You letting go the cause. And once you let go the cause, again you come back and step back in the freedom. And once you are free, mind is still. When the mind is still, you are contented. When the mind is contented, there is no agitation. When there is no agitation, mind is quenched. Mind is peaceful. So this is kind of a process happening slowly and step by step. And more and more one may understand it, more and more one starts to appreciate it. And it does not mean that one can immediately become an arahant. So this is also kind of a freedom, but it is temporary. Because even though one may feel complete freedom of mind, it is not lasting for a long time, because still we have inner traits, still we have influxes, still we have latent tendencies. So those are coming and playing. So it's a kind of a self-reflection, introspection. So now you are understanding your own faults. You are understanding all the habitual patterns, various thinking patterns. For that, you need to have fair amount of peace in the mind. And that peace actually coming through this freedom of mind. Because when mind is staying in that freedom, mind has almost no agitation, no stress, and mind kind of enjoys a lot of freedom. That is where Buddha says, sanimitta bhikkhave uppajjati papaka akusala dhamma no animitta. Sanarammana bhikkhave uppajjati papaka akusala dhamma no anarammana. All these defiled states of mind arising by attached with an object, while associating with a sign. But at this state, there is no such sign at all. There is no object at all. So it is utterly free from defilements, utterly free from unwholesome states. So in a way it is pure. So one may encourage it, and Buddha advise it to maintain it, make it abundant. So he says, suppose you want to walk, and he has a kind of an inner feeling while walking, may mind be free. So if some certain defilements coming, he is not encouraging those, rather he likes to maintain freed mind. And suppose he now want to sit, and Buddha says he has a kind of an inner desire, thinking that while sitting, may I be free. May I be free from defilements. So while sitting also, he is just maintaining kind of a free mind. And when defilements arise, he know what to do, and by being mindful with them, without participating to them, again they fades away, again he establishes himself in the freedom. Suppose he want to lie down, and while lying down he has the idea, kind of a desire, thinking, while lying down may I be free. And suppose he want to talk with someone, and Buddha says don't talk which encourages defilements. So he explained various types of unnecessary or unwholesome chattering, unwholesome topics, which if you are engaged with, which encourage defilements. Instead he is recommending 10 types of subjects which may helps you to maintain a freed mind, undefiled mind, wholesome state of mind. And suppose he wants to go on alms round for monks, for example. And Buddha says, you have some kind of an inner desire, kind of a wholesome desire. While going on alms round, may I maintain a free mind. So likewise, so Buddha encourages us to make this practice available everywhere. It is not that you are coming for a retreat and only at the sitting period you are trying to do it. Now the practice become kind of a part of your life. From the very morning, from the very beginning of the morning, you are watching the mind. and you understand the state of the mind. A separate sub-process is watching the mind. You may be doing various other things, still you watch the mind. And time to time you check it. What is now going on in the mind? What is the state of the mind? What is the state of the mind? It becomes the Dhammavichaya. It becomes the investigation of the mind. That is where we are developing investigation ability. Buddha tells that as an enlightenment factor, Dhammavichaya. And with time to time, constantly, we are checking the state of the mind. If it is holding to something, it generates some kind of stress. You understand that stress. Once you are understanding it, you understand the cause of it. What we need to do to cause? We need to release the cause. We have to let go of the cause. Once the cause is let go, we again come back and enjoy the freedom of the mind. So this is the kind of a process that the yogi may apply for most of the time, and again it becomes kind of a ongoing process. Because sometimes we can't just keep the mind free or entirely free from objects. Rather, we have to fully engage with certain work, which involves a lot of mental activities. So you have to think, you have to plan, you have to reflect about the past, plan about the future, many mental activities. It generates a lot of stress actually. But you are spending at least some time in the day to reflect and for yourself. Sometime is separated or sometime is reserved for yourself, and step back and see the state of the mind. If it is stressful, if it is agitated, if it is now holding strongly to certain objects, what has happened throughout the day, and you are now have the responsibility to again release the mind. So you may be doing various jobs, you may be talking to others, you may be traveling, or you may be doing various other activities. All these activities may generate some kind of stress to the mind. But once you have some free time, say at night for example, so at that time you are watching the mind and just see where are the causes, where you are holding, where the mind coming and generating ego, where you are being threatened, where your ego has threatened, where I is generated. So all these things are kind of an inner reflection, and you have to again recover from those places. Again you have to let go those attachments, those graspings. Once you let go those graspings, again you are able to come back and rest in that peace. So that is where Buddha says in Dhammapada that when the wise person understands there's a refuge in a kind of a state of mind which is free from suffering, free from defilements, and he used that as an island. Deepang kairata medhavi yang ogho nabikirati. So the yogi, the wise yogi, prepares such island so that he can rest without any friction. And that becomes his island of refuge. That becomes his baseline for his practice. So again and again mind get agitated and he release it, and now come back and rest in that island. Slowly, if someone practice like that, he may understand where he go wrong. He understand what are the mental patterns. He may understand what are the tricks in the mind. He may understand the inner traits. And slowly he release himself from these traits. And sometimes all these things, all these agitated states, all these established consciousness, he sees as suffering. Whenever somewhere mind is established, he feels the stress. He feels the tension and he don't like to be in the tension. It's quite obvious because mind becomes utterly sensitive now. And Buddha says in another sutta, Yankinchi dukkhang sambhoti sabbhang vijnana paccaya. So whatever the suffering arising, it happens due to established consciousness. You can see he is now explaining the Dhamma in terms of consciousness. Whenever consciousness get hold on to, whenever you are holding to any kind of object, there the consciousness establish. When it happens, some suffering arise, some stress arise. Vijnanasa nirodhena natti dukkhansa sambhavo. If you are able to release your hand, dispassionate about it, then that established consciousness start to cease, start to fades away. Etamadinavan nyatva dukkhang vijnana paccaya. So when one understanding it again and again, and he understand the consequences of that established consciousness. Etamadinavan nyatva dukkhang vijnana paccaya. So the suffering, stress occurs whenever mind get established, holding on to something. He understands it. Vinyunupasama bhikkhu nichata parinibhuta. So he now releases his hand and he allows it to fade away. He allows it to cease. And more he does it. And he feels calm. He feels released. He feels peaceful. And this is how actually we need to practice. And this is how particularly the vipassana develops. This is how we have to develop emptiness. This is how we have to develop signless concentrations. So all these are in a way taking time. And don't think immediately get into everything. And Buddha particularly say, on these stages, you have to allow things to happen. You can't use effort to control things. Rather, you accept things. When thoughts are happening, you are not blocking them now. You allow them to come. Let it come. And when they are there, you step back, you separate from them, and you let them be. When you are separated from them, you are not adding to it, you are not fabricating to them, and you are not participating into the process, and they slowly go away, and you let them go. So the practice becomes letting come, let it be, and let it go. It's a kind of an open awareness. Because you know the freedom of the mind. You are enjoying the freedom of the mind. And while you are enjoying the freedom of the mind, now thoughts are coming. And you allow them to come. You are not agitated. You are not getting deluded. You have peace of mind. But right now, some kind of little stress may be arising. It's going through. You let it be. You step back. And since you are not encouraging them, since you are not participating into the process, they simply let go. They simply fades away and you are simply letting go. So the practice becomes in a way utterly simple. Simple in the sense that it is not easy, but the thing you need to do becomes utterly simple. But say for example at the beginning, as a beginner, so he has to tackle the distractions, he has to tackle the sounds, he has to tackle the posture, he has to tackle the pain, many things to do. But now as the yogi develops in the vipassana, so it's very much like watching the mind. He always has to guard the mind. He always has to see what's the state of the mind. And more he does it, more he enjoys the clarity of the mind. More he enjoys the mindfulness. And he appreciates that simplicity of the mind rather than very much about that lustful, agitated, excited state of the mind. So he likes to be in this simplicity. He likes to be in this clarity of the mind, and he appreciates that than an agitated state of mind. Now, by watching a movie, by watching a cinema, by watching hearing a song, and all these things, beautiful, maybe exciting, but still agitated, still stressful. Rather than doing that, this type of practice encourages that simple mindfulness, simple clarity of mind, unattached nature of the mind, unestablished consciousness. So, if we can do it, we are able to slowly kind of release our attachments, release our stress, release our holdings, release our graspings. And Buddha says, Vinyunupa sambha bhikkhu nichchata parinibbuta. He feels utterly quenched. When someone is quenched, there is no more to do. He becomes utterly peaceful. So basically, at the end, he attains Nibbana. So, momentarily he may feel quenched, but it may be again disturbed by various other things. Again he applies the practice, again he become released. Again defilements come, again become released. So it is a kind of a practice that you are experiencing it in the present moment. It is not that you are practicing to become released in the future life. Rather, when your mind is grasping, you feel the tension, you apply the practice, and you are freed. There itself you enjoy freedom. So Buddha's teaching, therefore Buddha says, Adi Kalyanam, Majje Kalyanam, Pariyosana Kalyanam. At the beginning it is beautiful. The middle also it is beautiful. At the end also it is beautiful. And it is akalika. There is no any kind of a temporal distinction. Anywhere, anytime. If you are applying it, the result is yours. And Nairyanika. So if you are practicing it, it is not that it is giving results only during the Buddha's time. Results may give even today. Results may give even tomorrow. That is the beauty of the Buddha's teaching. So I hope this Dhamma sermon help us all to understand this beautiful teaching of the Buddha. And I wish all of us to enjoy to the maximum this beautiful teaching and utterly free from all the refinements and attain path, fruition, Nibbana.